Hello and welcome to Talk Art. I'm Sally Rain and I will be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and the art that's all around us. Talk Art is sponsored by the Silicon Valley Open Studios. During the first 3 weekends in May, hundreds of local artists open our studios to the public. For more information, you can go to the website svos.org. Our guest, Diane Moomey, has spent many years as a sculptor in clay, and now she creates beautiful watercolor paintings with an almost magical depth. She also has a very active poetry practice that reflects her visual creativity. So welcome, Diane.
Thank you so much for having me, Sally. This is delightful.
Well, you have such rich imagery in your paintings and the watercolor depth. What's your background? Where does this come from?
I think it comes from the stories that we have as humans. I'm very inspired by myths and legends and archetypes and by nature and by the cave paintings at Lascaux and ancient people's art. Just many things. Sometimes a poem or anything can just trigger an image in my mind.
So you've been an artist through many different media.
I have.
So sculpture and collage and bookmaking, you're a poet. How did you learn all of these different art forms?
That's a good question. I went to work actually. What I did was go and look for working artists in the medium and ask if I could either take classes from them. That's really, I guess that's the shortest answer to your question.
So you went out, found artists?
Found artists and said, "Are you teaching? And can I work with you?"
Excellent. And sort of look over your shoulder?
Well, usually they gave classes, so
right.
so I would be part of the class, but yes. And I bought all kinds of books and learned from books, and so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So your paintings, a lot of them come from water. Where does the water imagery come from?
Well, just the last few years that suddenly became something that I wanted to paint. And I grew up around the Great Lakes, and I miss that out here. I mean, there's the ocean, but it's not the same. Fresh water is a different creature than ocean water. And so a few years ago, I just found myself going back into water. I mean, one of my sisters lives on Lake Champlain, so I went to visit her, and that was the trigger really for this last one, because one of the ones that we'll see in a few moments is actually from a photo that she took and let me make a painting of.
Let's take a look at those images now.
Okay, that's great. Oh, this one, the idea for this one actually came from a postcard that I saw of Phuket in Thailand, but my mind superimposed childhood cottage at the lake kind of summers, and so I made myself a chair on the deck, and there's my cup of coffee sitting next to it,
looks so
waiting
peaceful.
for me.
So blue and peaceful.
Yes. This was inspired by the estuary at Pescadero, although it's not the estuary at Pescadero, but it was inspired by that. And I just started working on lines on the paper. I want this river, and I want it to be running through a kind of a marshy area, and then 2 kayaks where the people have just gone off for a walk.
Right.
And they're going to come back.
There are people there somewhere.
There are. The people are there.
The
They've just taken a walk, and they're going to be back.
I love the distance. That is what the distance looks like in that Pescadero marsh.
Yes, and the
Beautiful.
blue, I love those blues and that little bit of yellow and that autumn brown. There are a couple pigments, sedimentary pigments, earth tone pigments that I especially love. Burnt sienna, burnt umber, raw umber, and the ochres, and those have gone into making that. I wanted to do water drops. I suddenly became obsessed by water drops. So I'm not sure if it shows up for the viewer, but on each of those blades of grass is a droplet. And I went on to, because no way is a drop of water going to stand still long enough for me to look at it.
Right.
I went to photo search and I wrote in water droplets on leaves, and I got hundreds and hundreds of images.
Yeah,
so I just really looked at them and thought, what is it that makes this a water drop? And so
what is it?
It's
the reflections?
Yes, it's the reflections and what's around it and how that determines the shape of what the reflection is.
I really like that it's dark in the foreground and light in the background.
Well, being a wetland, it's really murky in areas, and yet there are places where the sun comes in, and that's where that is. This is the photo that my sister took, and she gave me permission to make a painting of it.
Oh, that's nice.
I put the canoe in it, but she had the tree trunk, and the amazing way that the roots go down into the water, and you can see them. Almost like they're live things separate from the tree itself, like they're going to walk away from the tree and establish their own life somewhere else. And I think this shot in the photo was right after the ice went out at Champlain, which would have been about April or so, April or May.
Wow, look at the colors in that.
I know.
How do you choose colors like that?
Well, that's actually redder on the monitor than I painted it, but I just always wanted a red canoe, and so I made myself one. And the inside of the canoe, you can see there's some modeling there to indicate a curve of like the way that a fiberglass canoe curves, and that was done with underpainting, which we'll talk about more later on. And the reason for doing it is because it is more difficult to create shadow effects with the transparent colors than it is with the staining colors. So I do my underpainting with those and then do clear washes of the transparent color on top.
Interesting.
So now I have my own red canoe and an orange one too. So, kind of the last of autumn. The storm is coming in and the trees are at their peak of gold.
Wow, and then you choose the colors of the reflections so interestingly for this one.
I know.
I like it. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So how did you choose the blue colors there?
Well, I just, I went looking at a lot of images and just chose the ones that I like. One thing I noticed is that in the color wheel, that orange and blue are opposites, are complementary, so they tend to make each other pop. So,
well, let's see a demonstration of how you do the underpainting.
Okay. I chose a very simple image for this, just for the ease of showing on the camera. I start with a drawing. This drawing is much heavier and darker than I would normally use. But so I've indicated in the drawing where I'm going to have my shadow areas. And because this is a weaving, it's an intellectual exercise.
Right.
You know, it's going to be darker as it goes underneath and lighter on the top.
Interesting.
So this is just a sketch pad. So because to draw in pencil on watercolor paper and erase it ruins the surface. I do my whole drawing on the scratch paper and transfer it with tracing paper onto, I made 2 of them for the demonstration. Onto this, you can just see the pencil lines underneath, and I'll erase them at the very end. These are 2 ways that I use underpainting. When I did the canoes, I used the color. I
Right.
decided what my final color was going to be, and then I chose an underpainting color to match that. Sometimes I'll use it as a value study, almost in a more monochromatic work, and then I'll pick one average dark color for it.
Oh, interesting.
And the colors that are used, the pigments that are used, I'm going to put these back now, and the pigments that are used for this are what's called the staining pigments. And these are alizarin crimson, and because I use Winsor colors, Winsor and Newton colors, Winsor blue, Winsor green, and then there's Payne's gray and Hooker's green are also good for staining colors. And they really grab the paper. Once they're in, that's it. And you can paint transparent layers on top of them. So you can do all your modeling underneath, look at it and see if you really like it. Like I can look at this and say, oh, maybe I want a little bit more darkness here, or maybe I want something else over here. I can make those decisions before I do the top painting. And then the top painting is done with what's called the transparent pigments, and I have a triad of these here. There is permanent rose, cobalt blue, and oriolan yellow. And with these, I can make just about any color that I want.
Right.
And just for a little bit of a demo today, I'm going to mix up a red-orange, take a little bit of the permanent rose, a little bit of the oriolan yellow.
What kind of brush are you using?
I'm using a Robert Simmons Scepter Gold. I love it. It's it feels like a sable, but it's a synthetic. It's just great. So now I'm making this quite wet because I can always go back and glaze more.
Oh.
So I'm just going to set this down, and now so you can see it, I'm just going to take one. And lay in my top coat. Now see how transparent that is? You can see all the modeling underneath. And I'm not being as neat with this as I would be in my own studio, but you can get the idea.
So in your mind's eye, do you already know what it's going to look like, and you're going
I have a
towards
general idea. Sometimes I'm surprised, but usually I like to have a pretty good image of what I want. So now I'm going to take this same mix, and I've done my little cheat sheet here, and I've put my color notes on each ribbon, because when I finish this demo, I will show you the finished painting of using a weaving technique like this, that you can see why I would have gotten crazy if I hadn't marked them all. So here's just my little bit of red-orange here. Turn it around.
Do you do a color study before you paint?
For a big one, yes, because a big painting can represent 3, 4, 5 months of my life, and I've got to have that. So here you can see the different quality just of the 2 different kinds of underpainting for that. And let's see, another kind of underpainting uses salting, and the images that we looked at just now don't have any in them, but the next set that we'll go to after this will have that. And so I've prepared this other. By the way, these sheets are 300-pound cold press watercolor paper.
So very
They
heavy.
are tough enough to stand up on their own, and you can work on the other side. I hated the first one when I started, and so I turned it over.
Nice.
This is a block of 140 cold press, and I like them both equally. The block is easier to carry around. So the first step in this salting demo is I've drawn a circle on here, and I'm going to take plain water, well, which is slightly stained with the red-orange, but we won't pay too much attention to that. We'll pretend it's perfectly clean.
So why would you paint clean, clear water?
Because the paper underneath needs to be quite moist for the salting effects to develop. And this is 5 or 6 layers underneath here. So the slower you can make it dry, the better the salting effects are. So since I've already, let's see, I didn't really want this pink, but there you are. I know, I'll make up a little purple with some permanent alizarin crimson and some Windsor blue. Okay.
And so which paints are these?
These are the staining pigments, okay? Because the way that the salting works is that each salt granule sucks up pigment and leaves a white circle around it. But it doesn't do it for everything. It doesn't work on the transparents. It doesn't work on the sedimentary pigments. It only works on these. So I'm going to just drop a little bit of color in here. And I'm going to twirl it and use one of my favorite tools, which is just the body of a defunct pen.
So you're blowing on it.
I'm blowing it so I can actually direct the color where I want it to go. So I think I want just a little bit more blue in there. Okay.
You can mix colors that way too, right?
I can. So at this stage of it, actually, ideally, I would wait until it's not running around the edge. But I'm going to go ahead and put the salt on it now anyway. I've got 2 grades of salt with me. This is just regular table salt. This is a little bit coarser. And they all give different effects. I've known some painters to use baker's salt, which is large, large pieces. So here is some of the coarse. I'm going to just drop a little bit on it.
So this will make sort of an abstract pattern, or do you know what it'll do?
It will make kind of a billowing, yes, billowing and abstract pattern. And I don't like this bead, so I'm just going to remove some of this bead. Okay. Now, ideally, you put it at an angle of about that. Because if you put it flat, it doesn't move. The salt just makes round things. So if I set it at this kind of angle, then it will run, and I might decide, oh, I want it to go this way, because it moves in a certain direction. It tends to follow capillary reaction. It tends to move up. Now, normally at this stage, I would take that plastic lid and put it on top to retard the drying, but it's too flashy, so I won't do that now. So.
Well, let's see the finished piece that you were talking about.
Oh, yes. This is actually a print, but this is the piece.
Oh, yes. Lots of shadows.
That I did. And I wrote in tiny little pencil letters on each ribbon what color it was going to be, because I knew I couldn't keep it in mind. But this was probably 15 hours or so.
Beautiful.
So,
Well, let's take a look at some other images of some completed paintings that have the salted image and some of
excellent.
the pieces that you use. So this is one of your color studies, right, for a larger painting?
Yes, yes, it is. It's
The Golden
I did
Sister.
3 for the painting. I had the image in my mind of the painting was me and my 2 sisters in another life being herbal healing women. So there's one in a blue dress, one in a golden dress, and one in a red dress. And I wanted to make sure that I liked the colors and liked the pigments before I invested in the big painting, which was about a 4-month painting.
Wow.
So if you look at the leafy background, you'll see the salt marking.
Oh, so that's what the
That's
completed thing.
what the salt can do. And depending
Beautiful.
on how dry the paint layer is, the salt will be tiny or large. The drier it is, the tinier the specks. If it's too wet, of course, it'll just completely dissolve and you won't get anything. So it takes quite a bit of time to figure out. All right. So this is halfway through that huge painting. This is all of the underpainting, and then I've started a little bit on the top painting. So you can see the salting in the green background.
Yes.
And the modeling on their dresses and their bodies. That was the underpainting that I just demonstrated before. And the same with the big aloe vera in the front. That was also underpainted. And
Wow.
then that's the finished
Interesting.
piece.
And so you know that that undercolor is going to turn into that when you've got the
By now
transparent.
I do. I have
Really
enough
interesting.
experience, and I know which ones to mix. Like if I want a purple underpainting, then I'll use the alizarin crimson and the blues. If I want green, I'll use the Windsor green, the Windsor blue, and a little bit of the alizarin crimson, because together they're too bright. They don't make a good shadow. So the red gives them, it tones it down just a little bit, pulls it down into a shadow look. And then, let's see, did I do anything else? Oh.
Tell us about this one.
Oh, this one, it's also underpainting and salting, but this one started years and years ago. I lived in La Honda for a long time, and every year there's a craft fair in the summer or the fall. Oh, it's gone. Okay.
What is this one?
Oh, this one is the reality behind the reality. The desert, the name of it is Desert Door, and it is thinking about looking through into another reality from the one that one is in now. Well, and this is Moon Path. Again, back to water and boats. And
I liked your use of circles to make it look as if it is in a different plane or a different reality.
Yes,
Very interesting.
because we see things through our own filters, our cultural filters, our personal filters, and just the fact that our eyes don't see everything. You know, we're very limited. And oh, end of summer. This is a cutaway. Underneath is all the underground streams, and then some animals that are setting up their winter abodes. And the framing again about looking looking from close up, because the border is leaves very, very close up, and then seeing at the distance.
Dance of 5 elements. Beautiful.
Each the triangles are fire. The circle is earth. The wavy lines are air. Sorry, the circle is water. The wavy lines are air. The square, which isn't completely visible behind it, is earth. And then around all is space. And this is weather. And in addition to salting with this one, I used a lot of tissue paper, facial tissue, to change the spread of the water. I made very thick layers in the circle first, and then patted where you see it's white. I patted with the tissue to make that cloud look. Then when that was dry, I did the outside of it.
Beautiful. And I love this one. So many perspectives.
I do too. It's just, it's Green Man, and I saw the Green Man as recognizing himself. I didn't know a lot about the Green Man myth at the time, just enough to tantalize. And I saw the Green Man seeing water as his mother element, and looking at, kind of almost trying to embrace the water. But of course the water is always something a little bit outside.
Well, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
And your work is so beautiful. I look so much forward to seeing you at the Silicon Valley Open Studios.
That is really exciting. This is the first year that I will have done that. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you so much for being on Talk Art. This
Oh,
was a
you're
wonderful
welcome.
show.
Thank you for having me. It was great. Okay, bye.